Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to our grad open house. This session is going to be about our MAID program, which is a dual program with Brown University. And so we have representation there as well. My name is Molly. I'll be working here in admissions behind the scenes throughout the presentation. The presentation will be then followed by Q&A. So we'll have some open Q&A time at the end. Please do type your questions in the Q&A portion of Zoom, not in the chat. I'll be dropping helpful links throughout the presentation in the chat for y'all. So let's get started. I'll pass the mic to Jonathan and stay sort of behind the scenes.
Thanks, Molly. My name is Jonathan Knowles. I'm the co-director of the MAID program on the RISD side. And I just want to introduce our panelists today. We have Beth, who is the MAID director at Brown University. Tori is the program coordinator, and Griffin is one of the instructors and maker in residence. So that's the group available today for the talk. Next slide, please, Griffin. So the agenda, we're going to briefly go over some of the program highlights, the curriculum, some current student profiles, and then lastly, the application process. And it's just important to note, as you probably have figured out, it's a dual degree, as Molly said, between Rhode Island School of Design and Brown University. It's 1 full year of instruction from July through May. And I guess next slide, Griffin, please. What's great about the program is we share the resources of the two institutions, which are we're neighbors. We're basically on top of one another in terms of facilities. But we have some pretty amazing labs and shops and faculty that share in the program, including the Brown Design Workshop, our Nature Lab, which is pretty spectacular, and then the multiple departments between the two universities. Who is next?
So I'm next. I think, and one thing to emphasize about our community is not only are you here getting to experience the resources from both schools, but also getting the opportunity to make friends and find mentors in both of these communities. So maybe we'll go to the slide about our values. I'll talk a little bit about how we think about that. So we're still a young program. We're in our 4th cohort right now. And we talk a lot about our values being about designing with passion, humility, quality, and humanity. And we are a mostly collaborative program, meaning all of our projects, all of our studio projects are team-based in some way. And we talk about that in terms of collaborating across design and technology fields and learning to leverage all of the available intelligences in the room and learning to work together in a way that inspires future collaboration. This is something that is different about our program compared to a lot of our peers. Design research is a key feature of our program. We talk about learning to apply those multiple disciplinary lenses from both engineering fields and design fields to deepen our problem and solution understanding and becoming the best data-driven listeners and synthesizers. Design communication and interaction in our program is about learning to communicate the value of our projects and connect them with audiences in ways that inspire engagement, action, and reflection. And finally, design iteration and implementation is core to all of our studios. We're iteratively creating and seeking feedback from both communities and building ideas into compelling projects and actions that can inspire a better world. If we move to the next slide, Griffin, you can share a little bit more about how each of our studios has multiple real design cycles.
Yeah, all of our core studios are based around real world design cycles where you'll go through the entire iteration, prototyping, the the ideation, prototyping, and deployment stages. And in each of the studios, you'll focus on different areas, and some will be larger than others. But we feel that that the best way to create impactful projects is to go through complete design cycles.
Okay, let's move to the next slide. Every cycle is a little different, so you always learn something new each time. This slide shows an example, a few examples of student projects, and what I'll quickly go through each of these, but in the subheading, it's what the project is about, and then below that are the mix of skills of the students who work on that, again, because everything is team-based in our program. So one of these, recycled textile furniture, has a team that comes from product design, user experience design, industrial design, and molecular biology. Another one is a story-driven video game that is a combination of students from computer science, graphic design, user experience design, and animation backgrounds. Another one is an AI integrated storybook. You can see that's a combination of UI, UX, and digital experience design team members. The recycled foam installation is a mix of UX, XR, product design, and physics. The focus enhancing glasses creators were a combination of students from fashion, human computer interaction, and architecture fields. The AI connected biosensor is coming from a mechanical engineering, UX, and AI background, and the XR mindfulness companion is a combination of product design, computer science, studio art, and industrial design. And finally, the interactive data visualization for the city of Boston that we did last year was a combination of digital experience design, graphic design, data visualization, and public health skills. So this slide, I think, gives a good overview of the range of projects that our students pursue, as well as the range of skills on our student teams, which we try to optimize for shared interest and diverse skills. Let's head to the next slide. So this shows our core courses project-based studio arc, and I won't read the detail for this, but all I want to highlight is that our core studios run in the summer, fall, winter, and spring, and all students in our program take those core studios. And in the fall and spring, you also have electives, and those are 2 electives in fall, 2 in the spring, and our students use them in a lot of different ways. Sometimes all of those electives are at Brown, or all of them are at RISD. Our students take courses in almost every department of RISD, and that's how they shape their kind of personal goals and trajectories through the program. In these different core studios, we're making a number of different large projects, and they each have a different emphasis in terms of how we think about publication and presenting our work. So in the summer studio, it's more of an entrepreneurial process where we build a project or a product, and the final credit is a pitch plus the project. And we just found out today that some of our students got their paper accepted to ACM, which is very exciting. And then in the fall, the students are building their projects and writing technical papers about them. In the winter, students are practicing visual and interaction design skills, and they are producing an interactive with a publication that's more like an exhibit. And in the spring, it's a little more open-ended and culminating in the RISD grad show. And students pursue a lot of different types of projects for that course.
Which I forgot to mention is the pretty spectacular show for all graduate students at the end, during graduation, for both institutions. So your work is highlighted alongside everybody else at the Rhode Island School of Design.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. You should come and check it out. It's a really inspiring highlight in the year. Let's head to the next slide. And Griffin, you want to just maybe pull out a couple of highlights from this slide?
Yeah, I think it's the our teaching teams come from a variety of backgrounds, and in different studios, you'll be exposed to a combination of those skills. Some of them including designing with emerging technologies, collaboration design, functional testing, validation, and high fidelity prototyping. That's what really excites me. Systems design, sustainable design. You can see the full list here.
Great, thank you. And if we haven't said so yet, all of our studios are co-taught, and we try to have representation from both design and engineering, and both Brown and RISD in those. And it varies a little bit year to year, but that allows us to bring a lot of skills to support the projects.
And industry.
And industry, yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's move to the slide about electives. So our students use their electives in a lot of different ways, and this slide just gives a few examples. So sometimes our students will come in and they'll be wanting to deepen their technical skills. All of our students come in either from an engineering background or a design background with enough kind of technology in the mix of what they're doing that they can all sort of collaborate at the same speed once they come into the program. And then some of them will use their electives to deepen their technical skills from their starting point. Some of them will use their electives to deepen their design skills. And some of them will use them for deepening their subject matter knowledge. So here are some example courses in environmental fields or health fields or education fields. The electives are really an opportunity to chart your own course. I think it is useful to say that our, as a 1 year, 11-month/1 year program, there are limitations in terms of how you can turn yourself into someone who's an expert in another discipline. So our program is really best suited for deepening some existing skills and bridging to other disciplines, but not really to become another discipline. And we're happy to field specific questions about that if any of you have them. Let's move to the next slide, and I'll start this out and then pass it over to Jonathan. But this is only a few of us are on the call today, but this gives a little introduction to the rest of our faculty. And we all, as you can see here, are pretty diversely skilled, which is how we support such a range of projects. So I originally studied architecture, but that was so long ago. And I moved into more user experience design, human-computer interaction, and like pretty much everyone these days, I'm thinking a lot about AI. And Paolo Cardini is in the industrial design department at RISD, and he is the lead for our spring course, and he co-teaches that with Chucky, who you could see right below him, who is from a computer science background and human interaction and AI. And Tino Chow is next up there, as a background in design, branding, and storytelling. Ian Halpern co-teaches the Fall Studio with Louise Manfredi. Ian's specialty is engineering, medical device design, and entrepreneurship. And Dr. Manfredi's specialty is sustainability and engineering. Jonathan, do you want to briefly introduce your background?
I'm a professor of architecture at RISD, but I'm also getting very much involved in sustainable materials, especially biofibers, and have several research initiatives going on with the Nature Lab currently. And that we should also highlight that the Nature Lab is a growing department at RISD, and a lot of students are coming in with a desire to transform our society through alternative materials, natural materials, and healthy materials. So that field is growing rapidly at RISD.
Bio-inspired design and regenerative design are themes on campus today. We also have Rich Morales in the bottom left here. Rich specializes in systems design and engineering and happens to be a retired general and brings a lot of expertise from large scale projects to our team. Tori in the middle is our MAID program coordinator, who you've met. She makes the magic happen. And Monty Sharma is a specialist in game design and entrepreneurship, and he is in the summer studio team along with Rich Morales. Elizabeth Sylvan's specialty is technology, ethics, and AI, and Elizabeth and Chucky have developed a new course that is an elective at RISD this spring on designing with emerging technologies. And then finally, you have Griffin Van Horn, who you can see right now, and is our wonderful technical instructor and maker in residence. Let's head to the next slide. This next slide, I'm not going to read all of these. All I want you to see is that we interact with a number of folks in industry, and we do this in a few different ways. So they might come in as design critics to provide feedback on your projects. Sometimes we will bring them in as guest lecturers or to offer a workshop. Sometimes we will even partner with them in a way in a studio to create a simulated client experience. We know that most of our students are industry adjacent. They're excited to explore the job market and meet people doing really interesting things. And we try to bring in a mix of for-profit and nonprofit and really just introduce you to a range of cool people doing exciting things at the intersection of design and engineering. Jonathan, do you want to talk a little bit about our current cohort?
It's a particularly, you want to next slide, I guess. It's a particularly dynamic and what's the word? Collaborative group. Very strong sense of community with this group. And I've been working with them. And I'm going to repeat myself. I've been working with them to find their path within the Rhode Island School of Design, especially with regard to the electives. So I've gotten to know each of them, and I think you would say they're working very well together, right, Griffin?
Definitely, they're wonderful.
Yeah, both in the core studio and in electives that they're taking together. We have an awesome studio space in the School of Engineering building at Brown, and so you can be right next to your classmates and work on projects and kind of cross-pollinate on all of your disciplines.
What's pretty exciting is that not one of the students has a similar degree or background. And I think they just excel with each other in the studio format, learning from each other and collaborating in partnership. So it's a pretty exciting studio environment.
It is. It's fun to drop by. They're always building something really cool. And it's also, I think it's notable that many of them have decided to work with different members of our faculty on research projects outside of the classroom. So it's a lot of fun all around. Maybe let's check out the next slide. This slide, again, I won't read through this, but what I want you to notice is that our students all have a little bit of work experience. And so we're looking for enough work experience to show that you can work well in a professional environment and make the most of the unique opportunities of this program. So one of the hardest things for students is that it's like a buffet of all that Brown has to offer and all that RISD has to offer in only 11 months. And so
Yeah.
We found that a little bit of professional experience is helpful for students to really make the most of that opportunity and stay organized and engaged in an active intensive program. So we often are looking for the equivalent of about a year of work experience, and this slide shows some of the companies that incoming students had already worked for when they joined the program. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. This slide represents a range of common aspirations for what our students want to do with their career. So there's a lot of emerging technology, entrepreneurship and technology intersection, hybrid digital and physical. Some of our students are purely interested in digital, product design, sustainable design, product management, to some degree behavioral design, and designing for health applications. So with that, I'll pass it over to Tori to talk about our application process.
Sure. Thanks, Beth. I think if we go to the next slide, we can start going over the details of the application process. So this is just a snapshot overview of the process. On the left-hand side, you have the priority application deadline, which is December 15th, with decision release mid-January, and the regular application deadline, January 15th, with the decision release early March. One thing to note is that our program does start in the summer, early July, so kind of keep that in mind as you're going through the process here. The requirements are the transcript, a TOEFL or IELTS if applicable, 3 letters of recommendation, a portfolio, resume and CV, and a personal statement. And if we go to the next slide, we can get into a little more detail on that. So I just wanted to make one note here that a lot of students ask is, do you have to apply to both universities? And the answer to that is no, you don't. You just apply to one, which is Brown. So what we're going to require is your transcript. Your unofficial to start is fine for the application, but later on we will require that you give an official transcript. Evaluations will be required if you are a student matriculating from a non-US institution, and that again will come later on after matriculation. And you will have to submit these transcripts from all of your post-secondary degrees. And the TOEFL and IELTS are required for all students whose native language is not English. And if you have a degree from an institution where English is the sole language of instruction, you do not need to submit these. At-home versions of both of these exams are acceptable. As far as the letter of recommendations, just follow the instructions, and we'd expect those from previous professors and supervisors, advisors, and make your requests early because letters can have context to other parts of your application. And it's important that the 3 letters are submitted. We won't be able to look at your application unless we have all 3 letters of recommendation. And I think we can go to the next slide. And I don't know, Beth, did you want to speak more about the portfolio?
Sure, I think I mean, we can all offer a perspective here, but I'll walk through what we require for the portfolio, and then maybe Jonathan, you also might want to weigh in on like how to think about presenting your strongest portfolio. So for our program, we require 7 to 10 pages in a PDF format that highlight. We suggest 3 to 4 projects. Please don't submit more than 10 pages. The committee will not review past the 10th page. So really emphasize quality over quantity for your projects. And some tips for that. Also, I should say the portfolio needs to be submitted through the secure portal rather than emailed to different people. And some tips, having a little introduction, describing your process and your product description. You can link to things, but you should include enough information that you're not expecting reviewers to go to that link to understand it. And then using images and videos, you can put those in your PDF. And you can link to a personal website, but again, include enough information that people could understand what it is that you're wanting them to review. And then I think just broadly, what do we look for in a portfolio? We really want to see you, right? We want you to share with us the types of projects that you've chosen to do in the past, why they're important, and what your process or methodology was. And if anything happened with that, if you sent it somewhere or you presented it somewhere, it's nice to know those types of things. Jonathan, do you want to add anything?
Just, what is the narrative behind the project? So you think of it as a storyboard
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, so we have a sense of what you did on the project, if it was collaborative, what your part was. And I like what Beth said, where did it go? Did it take off, get patented, et cetera? But if you could sort of storyboard it, and as Beth, I'll reiterate, don't post a public, a research paper, because we won't be able to wade through that. So short, sweet, and potent.
Excellent. Yeah, and we always get quite a few portfolio questions. We actually do offer an info session that is just on the portfolio. And maybe Tori, if you can grab the date for that and put it in the webinar chat, people can sign up for that. A lot of so that info session sign in will route you through Brown, and of course the application portal will route you through Brown. But it's important to know that just like we collaborate throughout our studios, that's also what's happening at the core of our program across these universities. And we're trying to make it wherever we can simpler for you by just having one one application to submit. Okay, let's maybe move to the last slide and leave that one up so that people can take a screenshot and grab any details from that so that they can follow up. And I think we could move to questions.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. That was a great presentation. I learned a lot. For the attendees here, please do type your questions in the Q&A section of Zoom. We do have one question here ready. Let's see. So do you have to come from an engineering undergraduate background to be considered for this program?
Absolutely not. You can. As I mentioned at some point before, about half of our students come from some flavor of engineering and about half of them come from some flavor of design. So we're really interested in both. It is nice if you're coming from a design background to show us whether and how you have interacted with technology in your process, because everything is collaborative and made. So we want to see that it's going to be pretty easy for you to just plug into a team of interdisciplinary folks who are making things pretty rapidly. Let me know if I haven't fully answered your question.
I think that's great. And to folks here, it's a pretty small group. So I just wanted to give attendees the opportunity to raise your hand if you want to just throw out a question to the team here. Be happy to just unmute you. Or you can always type it in the chat or the Q&A.
We do like to pride ourselves in our info sessions for answering lots of questions. So anything on your mind, please ask it.
Yeah, and I think some of the questions that I get specifically through RISD admissions is questions in terms of what if I don't know which program to choose, right? If it's just ID or just architecture or the MADE program. So, I think that that's a question that a lot of people have is how do they know what program is right for them?
I think that's a good question. And I'd be interested in hearing what any of the other panelists have to say. But I think obviously our program is really diverse, so it's a little different for everybody. But I think maybe a similar group at the PhD level is maybe the Media Lab. So you have a group of folks with very diverse interests, and I'm talking about the MIT Media Lab, that is, who come together and make the most of those combinations. But of course, we're a master's level program, but hopefully that can give you a little bit of a reference point, because if you fit really squarely into a discipline, you should probably do that discipline, right? If you want to be an architect, then architecture is going to be the best place for you to do that, right? If you want to be an industrial designer, then that's going to be the best program for you as well. Where our program is more about deepening what you've done and bridging across design and engineering, and for people who really love working with others and figuring out how to fast track what is possible by collaborating with people from different disciplines.
And Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, but it does, follow the Brown's ethos of constructing your own program in a sense.
It does to some degree. I mean, we do have our graduation requirements, so
Right.
there's not full flexibility to do that, but through the many projects that give a lot of flexibility, so your professors will often give you a design brief. There are some constraints, but there's a lot of room for flexibility within those constraints. So if you think about it at the project level, then yes, absolutely, you can really kind of construct your journey through that.
Whereas in, being in our architecture department, we're pretty tracked.
Yeah, that's another thing to focus on is, how much flexibility is there and what is right for your career goals. So, again, if you want to be an architect, our program is not the right program for you to get there.
I think one of the coolest things about the program that I end up kind of taking for granted because I'm so embedded in it is kind of how unique this combination of skills is, and kind of the access to the tools. We talked briefly about the Brown Design Workshop, which is our makerspace on campus that has some amazing machines and resources to make pretty much anything. And it's right down the hall from the MAID studio. And that's where my office is. So students are constantly working on different projects for the MAID core courses and for their electives. And they have the opportunity to kind of come up with an idea and start prototyping it pretty much as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
But
that's a
it's
great point. And that's a 10,000 square foot makerspace. It's enormous. It's got a lot of support. And we have always had on our core team the director of the Brown Design Workshop. So we work very closely with them.
and there's something really awesome about kind of the diversity of skills of those projects that we showed. I could even back it up to that slide. Where for these projects that have that require a number of people from a number of disciplines to execute them, that you have there's so much cross-pollination between these students with these backgrounds. So you have the ability to create a project with a couple of different elements to it, all within your cohort.
Yeah, I liked how you're thinking, Griffin, of what are common questions that we get that we might not have answered here.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions here. I did just put the email address both for the MAID team and then graduate admissions here at RISD to field any questions about the different programs. you know, if you don't want to blurt out your question to everybody all at once, it's fine. We understand, but do get in touch with us if you have further questions. I'm just going to give it one more minute. We'll see if people chime in. But is there anything else that anyone wants to add to this? Yeah, I think the presentation was great. And, you know, this is recorded. So if you guys want to go back and look at the presentation, you're welcome to do so. I'll actually put the YouTube playlist in the chat just so you guys know where to find it.
There is a question in the chat.
Oh yeah, look at that. Okay. Would it be helpful to add VR projects to my portfolio? Good question.
Sure, yeah. I mean, like we said, we want to see you. So if that's it's something that you've been working on, we'd love to see that, you know, and that would fit right in with students we've had in the past and even some students in the current cohort. So we would love to see that. I think while we're waiting to see if any more questions pop up, I would just build on what Griffin was saying earlier about what is so wonderful about the students working across their many disciplines. One thing that I really enjoy compared to other programs I've been a part of is how that also happens at the faculty level. So it's really fun to work with and learn from our colleagues because we are co-teaching and mixing our methods over time. And we also get a little more efficient each time at, you know, being able to kind of speak one another's disciplinary language, which is, you know, part of the goal of what we're doing at the both the faculty and student level. So that's really gratifying for me. Any other questions?
One thing that that I think might be helpful to, just as I'm looking at portfolios, just to emphasize what Beth and Jonathan have already said. It's so helpful, and to kind of see who you are and what and how you think, and kind of have that embedded in your portfolio. You know, there's a lot of you know, I'm much more interested personally in seeing, you know, your process, how you got to identifying this problem and why, you know, you feel like it's the most compelling, you know, problem to solve, rather than just showing off a, you know, very high fidelity image of a beautiful looking prototype, but to really, you know, kind of paint the picture of the entirety of the process.
That's a really good point, because in each discipline it can vary a little bit what the norms are for portfolios. We're quite interested in how you think, any methods that you use, any tools that you use, so that we can get a sense of how you might think on new projects in this program.
Anybody?
I'll tell you what, we get a lot of questions on our end, you know, which we will send to you, but you know, often the questions are about the portfolio and we don't necessarily know how to answer them properly. But we do have portfolio review sessions for students for our programs over here at RISD, the ID program architecture and so forth, just for graduate students. We do this online. We have one more on December 6th. I did just post a link that Tori was kind enough to give me, which is the link, what it looks like was to your portfolio session on December 10th.
A lot more information like that on our website, of course. There are two versions of, there are two websites for this program, one on RISD's website and one on Brown's website. And so check those out. You'll find a little more information on the Brown website. And now that you know where to find us, you can email made@brown.edu. We share access to that email address, so somebody will get back to you pretty quickly. I have had a question about what about portfolio entries for, say, user experience design, or you know, kind of like an experience map. That's great. we'd love to see that if that's been part of your practice so far. Those are totally fine in our portfolios. Our portfolios, as you might imagine, are pretty diverse. There's everything from how engineers communicate their projects to how architects communicate their projects to how user experience designers do it. That's all pretty different.
Another question that we got recently was about, let's say I have an interdisciplinary background. Do you want me to focus on one or the other element of that in my portfolio? And that's, we want to see you, and we want to see kind of that the range of experience that you have, and definitely finding that common thread and showing kind of what drew you to those things is important. But I think there's definitely benefit to seeing that interdisciplinary background.
Yeah, and I think also sometimes we'll get a question about, do I have to have a cohesive look to all of my projects? Not really. If you have an engineering project, so we just had a question earlier today, somebody who makes fine art and is also an electrical engineer. So great, we'd love to see a little bit of both of those in your portfolio. We do sometimes get questions about kind of housing and all of that. Tori, do you want to give an indication of how they might, what their best resource to learn more about that might be?
Yeah, so I think there are some links online. I'd have to look them up about housing. There's a lot of different options, of course, because you're in a city environment, so there are apartments you can rent, but there's also graduate housing through Brown, and I imagine through RISD as well. But one of the questions that had come up earlier today too was about the priority deadline. And why would you choose the priority deadline over the regular deadline? And really, if you find out sooner rather than later that you've been admitted, you have more time to search out those housing places where you want to go. You can get on waiting lists and that sort of thing. So it really gives you an advantage to getting ahead of that, which can be challenging if you're trying to do that last minute.
Yes, and likewise for international students managing a visa process, that can be
Right.
convenient to know earlier. So that's great. Thank you, Tori. And you can also find on the Brown version of our website, you can find a link to past info sessions that has more information both about housing on those slides, so some links to that, as well as financial aid. We do offer some need-based financial aid. And you can learn more about that through our email or through our info sessions, where a lot of those links are provided. Any other administrative stuff like that, Tori, that we should communicate?
Nothing that I can think of. Again, I thought it was important to point out the application process because we do get a lot of questions about if they apply to both Brown and RISD. And again, that's not the case. It's just the one application through Brown.
Some of that might be because for the dual degree program, you apply to both. And so
Right.
to clarify that, if that's a question for any of you, the dual degree program is an undergraduate program, the dual degree is the undergraduate Brown RISD program, and you apply to both schools and must be admitted to both schools for that. Whereas our program is a joint degree program. You apply through one portal. It's reviewed by people from both schools behind the scenes, and the degree from our program has the logos of both institutions on it. So it's one diploma. Other questions? Well, if nothing more is coming in, I just want to thank everyone for coming. We just posted this info session, so it's great to see some folks show up. And we love questions. We'd love to hear from you and answer your questions. And thank you all for joining me on the panel as well and helping present about our wonderful program and field some of these questions.
Thank you, Molly, for setting it up.
Yeah, happy to do so. Nice to meet you guys. Have a good night, everybody.
All right, good night,
Thank you.
everybody. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Good night.